Man, Stephen A. Smith and Charles Barkley, man, they going toe to toe, exchanging heating words between each other. We got some beef between Charles Barkley and Stephen A. Smith, and it is crazy and diabolical. But we're going to unpack all that here next, here on the Simply Ball Dropping Podcast. Man, Stephen A. Smith is kind of rattled from the latest comments from Charles Barkley. Now, it's a lot of layers to this Stephen A. Smith and Charles Barkley heated, exchange because, TNT Turner Sports is ending at the end of this basketball season and they got to go on their separate ways with these different contracts. And people are saying that Charles Barkley is in the midst of joining ESPN. But Charles Barkley has made it be known. You know how Charles Barkley is. Charles Barkley is very boisterous. Charles Barkley says what he feels, and he don't give a damn. And the comments that he's been saying about Stephen A. Smith, it's kind of rattled Stephen A. Smith. Now, we all know that Stephen A. Smith thinks he's the head honcho over there at ESPN, and he runs the show. And Charles Barkley basically is saying, man, Stephen A. Smith, man, give it a break, man. You're on TV too much. And, Charles Barkley did take a dig at, Stephen A. Smith and Kendrick Perkins about coming to work at ESPN. And he said, man, I don't want to work with them clowns. I don't want to work with them fools and stuff. But, that's how Charles Barkley is. And Charles Barkley, he just really just took a dig and took a shot and took some heavy artillery and talked about Stephen A. Smith bad, talked about, dude, man, give it a break, man. You're on TV too much. And then that just lit Stephen A. Smith into a fire, and Stephen A. Smith had to respond. But let's take a listen to what Charles Barkley said, and then we're going to listen to Stephen A. Smith's response when they was on the latest podcast. So let's take a listen to what happened.
But over his overexposure comment on our show, Stephen A. is rattled. Let's revisit what Sir Charles said on our show before we return to Stephen A. Smith's rebuttal. Here's Sir Charles with me last week.
My number one thing, people will get sick on you. So I don't want to be on TV more. I want to be on TV less.
I don't think that's the Stephen A. Smith method right now. I don't think that's his mentality, Charles.
That's not. As a matter of fact, I was in the studio last night, and I see he's going to be on Law and Order tonight. I mean, he's already on General Hospital. He's already on General Hospital. Now he's going to be on Law and Order tonight. And I was just laughing. I'm like, yo, man, you're starting to be too much right now. Like, you're going to be on CNN. You're going to be on Fox and Friends. Now you're on General Hospital. Now you're on Law and Order. I'm like, yo, man, knock it off. Stop being on every TV show. Because at some point, people are going to regret. They're going to get sick of you. And you're going to be like, yeah, I probably did too much. But once you do too much, it's too late. And then people don't take you serious. And I think he's got to be careful in that aspect.
Stephen A. Smith, of course, wasn't standing there taking it. Boom, boom, shots to the head. He wasn't taking it. He called Charles a hypocrite, or Stephen A. Smith on his own show.
My guy. That doesn't mean I always agree with him. And it doesn't mean that I'm devoid of the right to call him a flaming hypocrite when it's called upon. Do y'all have any idea how many commercials Charles Barkley does a year? He'll tell us 2. Have you seen Charles Barkley in 2 commercials? Are you kidding me? Oh, by the way, the cat that you work with at least twice a week during the NBA season is Shaquille O'Neal. Can we count the amount of endorsements he has? How often he's seen everywhere? What new product he's pitching? Did you say that about him? No, you didn't. But when it comes to me, I need to be careful. Oh, by the way, Dan Dockich, slickly brings up, me with politics and all of this other stuff. Wasn't it Charles Barkley who made news for years talking about his aspiration to run for the governor of Alabama?
Yeah, I mean, I did. I am slick. I slickly did that. No, I didn't slickly do that. We were having a...
Now, you heard what Charles Barkley and Stephen A. Smith had to say. Now, Stephen A. Smith, man, like, what does Shaq got to do with anything? Also, when Charles Barkley talked about who was going to run for governor of Alabama, that was just something he said. He didn't do a full-blown podcast talking about politics and he's going to run for governor. It was just mentioned. Stephen A. Smith, when you talked about you was about to run for president, you did a whole show on your Stephen A. Smith show about running for president. That's the difference. Then you're talking about commercials that Charles Barkley been in. Capital One, around the NCAA tournament. That's what Charles Barkley's commercials are. But Charles Barkley just said, man, you doing too much, man. You trying to be on TV. You got an ESPN show. Then you're doing your own podcast. Then you're in Law and Order, Fox and Friends, and things like that. And you took it in a way where you thought that you had to fire back at Charles Barkley and call him a hypocrite. All he basically said is like, man, you just doing a little bit too much, man. Just, it is what it is, man. But see, things like this, when people have their opinion and say things like this, it kind of riles up a lot of people, man. And at this point, I think Charles Barkley triggered Stephen A. Smith once again, because we've known what Stephen A. Smith and Charles Barkley, going back and forth in the past. Like I said, there's layers to it, man. And this ain't just start today. They've always had some things and bad intentions that they said about each other, but it's cordial because I think Charles Barkley really don't care how people feel about him or if they like him or not, because Charles Barkley, like I said, Charles Barkley is going to say what he want to say at any given time, regardless if you like it or not. He'll come on television. We know how he's been on Inside the NBA. You know how him and Shaq get into it. He'll say anything he says. You know what the words he said about Draymond Green. You know the words he said about many athletes and stuff like that. Call them idiot, bozos, and things like that. Charles Barkley's mouth is unfiltered. But see, Stephen A. Smith, he got rattled because of the things that Charles Barkley said. But I don't think in this situation that Stephen A. Smith had to really come back and fire back and call this man a hypocrite. I think some situations just leave alone. Stephen A. Smith could have responded like, hey, if that's your opinion, that's your opinion, but we can agree to disagree. But Charles Barkley riled him up. So now they're going toe to toe. And see, we know how situations like this are going to be. Now it's going to be a back and forth beef between Charles Barkley and Stephen A. Smith, the same way Stephen A. Smith and LeBron James went at it. And then in the midst of that, Stephen A. Smith was getting exposed. So Stephen A. Smith, man, you need to just leave this alone, man, because in the midst of this, you're going to be exposed once again. And Charles Barkley, he gave you the ammunition. Now you firing back, man. Sometimes you just need to leave things alone, man, and you don't have to address it, man. You know how Charles is. You know what Charles does. And you know how Charles can just come out of his mouth reckless at times. But you let Charles Barkley get up under your skin, and that's why you felt the reason that you had to fire back the way that you did, calling this man a hypocrite, man. So, hey, it is what it is, man. But we got beef, man. We got beef, man. Let the saga continue, man, because I know it's going to be more on this, because Stephen A. Smith ain't going to let it go. And I think Charles Barkley might respond back. But then again, Charles Barkley might not. He just might dead it out and just let it be. So, in this situation, man, we got beef, y'all. But I see everybody in the comments section, #salute. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, turn your post notifications on so every time Simply Ball drops another hot banger. And oh yeah, just in case I forgot, if you're not subscribed to the channel, do me a favor. Tell a friend and tell a friend. It might not be for you, but it might be for them. And we're going to catch you on the next one. Deuces.
Thanks for listening to the Simply Ball Dropping podcast. Be sure to subscribe, like, and share on all major platforms.
That's all, folks.